If you've been close to abortion in the past, and I'm going to say if you've had an abortion before, I know some people who've had an abortion that are in this room right now. Maybe you've counseled somebody for an abortion, you paid for one or more, drove somebody to an abortion. All of these things, you may start to see the unborn differently today. And we know that 30 to 50% of every audience that we speak to, this one included, has had some proximity to abortion in those categories that I just mentioned. We're going to get through, and God's grace shines through. And I want to tell you a quick story before I move on. Before the children of Israel went into the promised land, they were told, don't do like those people do. And child sacrifice was at the first of the list in Deuteronomy 18. And God told them not to do what those people did. If you remember, in the book of Judges, there's a guy named Jephthah. He's a judge, and he sacrificed not his baby, it was probably a teenage daughter, because he made a foolish promise. God's redemption is there for you. Now, for 700 or 800 years, there was the practice of child sacrifice, which is not as bad as abortion. I'm not going to go into that today. But the child sacrifice that they did for 600 or 800 years caused God, by his own promise and his own word, to banish them from the land. So they got exiled to Babylon. When he went, there was a passage that Jeremiah wrote for God to the exiles. Now, they're 1,000 miles from Jerusalem. And he says to them, when 70 years are completed for Babylon, I will come to you and fulfill my good promise to bring you home. This is after hundreds of years, and who knows, thousands, maybe millions of lives that were sacrificed in child sacrifice. But God says, after 70 years, I will fulfill my good promise to bring you home. Now, I don't know if some of you know this next verse. It all goes together. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Then you will come unto me and pray to me, and I will listen to you. The rest of that verse is nothing but terms of affection that God has for people who have rejected his specific command not to sacrifice their children. I will gather you from all the nations and places where I have banished you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back to the place from which I carried you into exile. God exiled him, and he brought him back, and he told him, you have a way home. If you've been close to abortion today, always remember that that verse is not just to encourage you through some temporal frustration or a thing you don't understand that God's doing in your life. It followed hundreds of years of child sacrifice, and he turns with love and grace to those same exact people. And he says, I'm going to bring you home. So if that's you today, God has already provided you redemption, and through what I've just told you, you can always hang on to that verse and know that he is big enough